G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. How would you be? Today is the 25th of April 2013, so it's Anzac Day. About 98 years ago, Australia and New Zealand helped England to invade Turkey. They did this because a Serbo-Croatian had shot an Austro-Hungarian the previous year in a town called Sarajevo, and therefore the whole world went to war. I had two of my father's uncles were at Gallipoli and landed there on the first day, and by this time of the day, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, one of them had already been gut shot and the other one had brought him down to the beach and put him on a rowboat to go out to a hospital ship. And Hope, who was shot in the guts, died 3 days later. So yeah, I was raised on the Anzac Day True Believer tradition, and as a kid, after I learnt to read, as an only child and Dad had not been in the army, Mum's father had died when I was 3, he was in the First World War. I got most of my ideas about World War II and World War I and Australia's military tradition from a couple of books that had been left in the holiday house that we went to. Because when Dad bought the house in 1948, he bought it off a World War II veteran, and that fella had fought in the Middle Eastern desert, and he fought in New Guinea with the Australian 2nd Imperial Force. And I was never allowed to take these books home, so I only got to look at them on the holidays, and I was fairly obsessed with them, I guess, you know, trying to make sense of World War II so I could therefore make sense of World War I, so I could understand military history, so that I could understand aviation history, because I was into aeroplanes, because Mum's father flew aeroplanes in the First World War. So did Dad's uncle, the one who did not get gut shot on Gallipoli. Right, so this is a malt liquor video because alcohol goes so very well with war stories. Here's one of the books, Active Service with Australia in the Middle East, and the other one is Khaki and Green with the Australian Army at home and overseas. Active Service, giving a nice look at the south coast of the Mediterranean. Published in 1941, full of heroic paintings and photographs. I revel in it. Can't say I particularly like the look of the brass hats, and I probably didn't understand a lot of the illustrations. And as a little Australian kid, I couldn't really understand what all this had to do with Australia. But it was full of battle maps and heroic illustrations, and I thought I knew what it was on about. And it was jam-packed full of 1914, 1918 comparison photos, as well as battle maps. And it was because of stuff that I read in this that I understood all the jokes about Italian battle tanks having 27 gears for going backwards and only 3 for going forwards. Because the story was the Australian Army captured the Italian Army, even though there was a bit of bad news, and a whole lot of the aeroplanes seemed to be pretty obsolete. The cartoons made it seem alright, and the ironic, sardonic, laconic Australian spirit was painstakingly illustrated. And it even covered some of the events where our side seemed to have lost for a while. But it doesn't matter. Lots and lots of smiling diggers in the illustrations.
Painting of a camouflage truck allegedly proving the effectiveness of army camouflage. Photograph of an anti-aircraft barrage in Tobruk with a couple of actual enemy aircraft visible. Back in the days before steroids, these were called bronzed Aussie He-Man heroes. These days they'd be called skinny little weeds, but anyway, such is life. Paintings of the casualty clearing stations, bomb bursts, artillery barrage, devastation at the dockyards, the occasional postcard shot. This does not seem to me to be a very safe or efficient machine with which to pursue the king's enemies. It's called a Bren gun carrier. Machine gun crews at an outpost position on the perimeter. By the way, that's a Bren gun. They weigh 28 pounds. Kind of hard to see why anybody would bother building one of those things to carry a Bren gun, especially soon as anyone can throw a hand grenade in through the open top. Aerial attacks on Allied shipping. Nurses. More nurses. Modern tanks of the day contrasted with the machine gun armed cars of their father's generation. Wonderful, morale boosting, patriotic, kill 'em dead'll, win a medal style of an illustration. And then there was the humour. It's a scorpion, you see. Quite a lot of humour, actually. In among the ink drawings of people and their equipment and their activities. Got to keep it humorous. Illustrations, educating with funny stories about the consequences of messing around with surplus ammunition, as well as daydreams about what will happen when they go home and start swimming naked at the beach in Australia, because that's what they've been doing in Libya. And there was a fair slab of imperial ethnocentric sexism and racism, as well as the occasional humanising shot of the enemy. Nazi Prisoner by Ivor Heel, who also drew this Australian foot slogger. Pretty funny to think that in 1941 they were starting to worry about how to come back to a peacetime world. They didn't know they had another 4 years of it ahead. Here we go again. World War I cavalry unit manoeuvres contrasted with World War II Bren gun carriers. Women we've seen but never really met. The mysterious type, she really doesn't arouse our curiosity. The career woman, she works for a living, not actually a test for our blood pressure. The water carrier, comely but old-fashioned. The Jewess navvy, not exactly our type. The Tel Aviv model, getting warmer, but a day's leave isn't long enough. Now we're living in Syria, we'll pay anything for French lessons. That's pretty funny in 1913, isn't it? Sorry, 2013. Battle of the Plagues. DDT versus mosquitoes. Peace where battle raged. Picturesque scene on the Litani River where there was bitter fighting against the Vichy forces. 2 glimpses of war activity, engineers clearing a creek bed, and a convoy on the coast road approaching Beirut. Like I said, a fair bit of ethnocentrism and racism built into the book. Page of battle dates from 1941. I guess they didn't put that one on the recruiting posters. A private of the Australian Imperial Forces after the capture of Tobruk by Ivor Heel. More ethnocentric racism. I've got to say that's the most spectacular photograph of the whole book. The flash of the gunfire is the strobe that has lit the scene, while the recoil has got the tyres lifted up off the ground. Or actually maybe it's mounted on a tracking mechanism. But yeah, that's an anti-aircraft gun. Firing into Tobruk. Well, actually, the caption claims it's recoil that's lifted the tyre, so I guess I must have read that as a kid and had it locked in the memory. Gives you an idea of how old it is. A Thompson submachine gun with a drum magazine. You don't see that in many World War II photos. They used to make clank, clank, clanking noises every time the gun moved, so it gave away the position of the patrol. Used to get a lot of people killed. Destroyed bridge. And 2 views of a camouflage net. This is why it's a good idea to have a camouflage net. So, let that be part 1. The Australian 2nd Imperial Forces 1940-41 excursion to the Middle East, as I saw it as a kid in the 1960s. The exigencies of YouTube uploading means that Khaki and Green will be part 2. And it's published in 1943. So, Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.